Welcome to this video today, which is a bodyweight circuit that you can do without any equipment in a small space like a hotel room. All you need is the floor and yourself. It consists of a 5-minute warm-up as you're seeing now, so just begin following along. And then we have a brief stretching period followed by 15 exercises that we repeat for 1 minute each, with only a 5-second rest period in between each one so that you can compose yourself and prepare for the next exercise. The workout's designed to be short and intense, and I've programmed the movements in a specific order so that we're not working on the same muscle groups multiple times over, giving them a chance to recover. And the way I'd recommend using this workout is if you're pressed for time or in an inconvenient place that's not your regular environment. Alternatively, you can do this at the end of a normal training session. In my case, that would be after doing some martial arts training. And you don't want to do this before your main skill activity because your body will be in a state of fatigue and you won't be optimal for skill work. So always do something like this at the end of your sessions, which is my recommendation. And this is the kind of training I've been doing for as long as I can remember to supplement my main training in martial arts, and provides the perfect conditioning for me. And when done consistently over time, this kind of training will hugely improve your overall athleticism, especially because there's also a lot of coordination involved in the exercises. Many martial artists are generally unfit and unconditioned and think that just doing techniques is enough, but it's not. If you want that full package, then you need to cover all bases and be working out like this regularly. Many of these movements also have acceleration and deceleration elements, where you have to contract your muscles to control your body and slow down your momentum, so it's amazing for developing overall body control in sporting activities. When each exercise begins, I'll give some brief pointers about the best way to perform it, as well as some mistakes to watch out for. But the main thing to bear in mind is that you just want to ensure your core is tight throughout everything you're doing here. Not tense and rigid, just composed in order to maintain control and balance throughout, as many of the movements involve jumping. Take a break when you need to, but try to get back into the workout as soon as you can. And if you need to really reduce the pace, this is much more preferable than stopping entirely. Make sure you keep moving. So we're just going to do a little stretching now before the main workout. Begin by placing your feet about 1.5 shoulder widths apart, with the feet facing forwards and the legs straight. Reach over to one of your legs and attempt to pull your body down towards it by holding the back of your calf while keeping the legs straight, and then go over to the other side and repeat. Next, move into a deep lunging position and straighten the back leg while being on the ball of the foot. And I like to do this yoga type movement in order to stretch out my chest and abdomen, and I'm turning towards my legs, stretching out my left hand into the air. Next, bring the hands to the hips and push your waist forward in order to stretch the hip flexors and try to straighten your back a little. And finally, return back to the original position and rock your body weight side to side, putting the weight on either leg, and make sure you're straightening the outstretched leg. You can also rock onto your heel as well, like I'm doing here. And this is really all I ever do to warm up. I think these long warm-up routines are quite overrated and I've never really felt any benefit from them, so this is all I do. Now very shortly the workout's going to begin after a brief warning, so get ready. This exercise is really simple. You just perform a front kick and then immediately go into like a runner's starting position and repeat, changing legs halfway through the round, and there'll be a bell telling you when to change. With these, try to make the kick relatively snappy and not lazy. So lift your knee up high first, snap the kick out and then retract it back in before crouching, rather than letting the legs slam down into the ground heavily. Remember, think control and finesse in everything you do, and be light on your feet always. With these, we're doing high knees for a count of 8, and then we crouch and counterweight while moving our feet as fast as we can in a needling type motion. And then we drop down and perform 8 floor sprints or mountain climbers, and then repeat. Make sure on the high knees you're lifting your legs to waist height and maintaining a rigid core. And when transitioning between the different movements, do it with some urgency like I do. Don't just hang around and cheat yourself out of the movements. When you're on the ground, keep the core strong and don't let your waist sag, and lift the knees aggressively towards your chest. Next, we perform 2 push-up knee raises straight into 4 squat thrusts, and then we stand up briefly in order to let the muscles recover before repeating. To get the most out of these, when lifting your knee in the push-ups, get it as high as you can towards your chest and contract the abs to bring it up that last inch. When you're doing the squat thrust, make sure your shoulders remain above your wrists and it's your legs that move towards your hands rather than the center, and then you having to meet them with your upper body. Doing them this way will have a much greater benefit to developing the abs. Again, don't hang around between the movements and delay. The more you do this, the less you'll get from the exercise. Try to transition into each of the different parts seamlessly. Again, we're performing the fast feet movement for a count of 8 to 10, and then quickly dropping down into a low push-up position and holding for a second before springing back up again and repeating the movements. The drop down is a deceleration movement, and you're having to use your muscles to kill the momentum of your body being pulled down by gravity. When you go down, you want to aim to become as perfectly still as quickly as possible before springing back up. The faster you can transition between the different parts, the better it's going to help you to develop your fast twitch fibers, which is what you want for explosive sports. These are some twisting high knee strikes with a constant hop in between to make them a little bit more challenging. Lift the knee up high as close to your chest as possible, and don't be lazy allowing your body to sag and meet the knee halfway up. At the contraction point, be sure to engage the core to raise the knee up just that extra inch for the most benefit. And also after executing the knee, make sure you draw the leg back a great enough distance to make the movement more dynamic so that you're not just stood on one spot. And there will also be a bell telling you when to change legs. Here we're performing 2 push-up jacks, then 2 squat thrusts in and out before a brief stand to recover before repeating. For the push-up jacks, you have to simultaneously shoot the feet out at the same time as you drop to the ground, but then have to stop yourself and immediately push back up again. Because this is a heavy deceleration move, it's very common for the waist to sag if you're too relaxed in the core, and this will actually make the movement 10 times more difficult, so be sure to maintain composure throughout. You might recognise this as one of my agility movements, which we perform at high speed and intensity, but we're going to be using them in this workout at a more moderate pace for a longer duration. Make sure you're constantly moving on these and don't hang around when you touch the floor with your hand. You want to be initiating movement in the opposite direction even before you actually touch the ground to make these work most effectively. Also, try to cover a good bit of distance to make the exercise better, and make sure you're taking at least 3 steps as you traverse side to side. For round 8, we're going to sprint for a count of 8 to 10, then immediately drop into 4 alternating lunges followed by 4 hopping squats, and then repeat. Again, ensure you're putting a bit of effort into the sprinting phase, raising the knees high, and when you drop down into the alternate lunges, make sure that there's enough length between the legs so that you have balance, and also make sure that you go down low enough in order to engage the quads, but be careful not to smash your knee off the ground. When doing the hopping squat, try to remain in the squatting position for the entire time so that you're not standing up, and the hopping part should be very minimal, about an inch or 2 off the ground to keep the legs under tension. It's not a big jump into the air. Likewise with the other exercises, try to seamlessly transition into the movements with some sense of urgency and don't hang around. Another one of my favourite agility drills, the stance switch, but like with the side-to-side touchdowns, we're performing this less intensely for a long duration. The most important thing with these is to ensure that the body moves as one unit, which requires core contraction. This is to ensure the position of the upper and lower body remains fixed throughout and doesn't become disconnected, twisting independently of each other. Be light on your feet and try to make sure you're moving constantly, not allowing yourself to rest as your centre of gravity begins to settle between each of the hops. Also, stay low to the ground. This is not a high jump in the air, and keep your arms pinned to your upper body like mine are, so that you can't cheat and use the arms to make it easier. This round will be split into 4 different parts. For the first, we perform continuous knees to chest jumps, doing our best not to stop and pause between each jump, and then afterwards we'll be dropping down into these crouching push-ups. For these, you want to remain in a crouching position with your legs bent throughout to keep them under tension, and when you fall forward into the low push-up position, you need to contract the core hard in order to decelerate and control your body. Saying that though, try not to hang around in the low position too long and push yourself up again as fast as you can to the original crouching position without standing up, and there will be a bell telling you when to change exercise. This is like a recovery round and it's just continuous high knees, but I'm sure you'll agree that doing this after all of the other movements, it's still challenging. Keep the core tight and try to lift the knees to the waist consistently. This movement involves a mid-range tricep dip followed by touching the toe of the opposite hand and foot with the leg extended and straightened. When you come out of the dipping position, try to lift the hips upward or the exercise is not going to work. Keep the core tight throughout this to retain composure and try to push up out of the dip position quickly to touch the toe before dropping down again. As with the others, try to be seamless between the different stages with as little resting as possible. In the plank position, we're going to perform a kind of lunging motion forward, raising each leg, followed by 2 Spider-Man push-ups, and finally a brief stand before repeating to let the muscles recover. For the lunging part, notice how I make sure my heel is the point of the foot that touches the ground rather than my toe, which makes you engage the obliques more. When performing the Spider-Man push-ups, keep the core strong and try to get the leg as close to your oblique muscles as possible, at which point you can track them hard in order to lift the leg that last inch. Try to move fluidly and with intent throughout, instead of being sluggish and laboured. Another resting movement here because the last round was quite challenging, and this one is scissor switches. Keep the core rigid throughout to maintain composure and make sure you're not covering too small of a distance on the switches. And you can use your arms like I do, raising them up to the chest to make it just a little bit more difficult. Finally onto the last round, and these are called kickstands, in which you transition from a sprinter's start position into a jump, raising the knee. When you initiate the jumping part from the lunge position, contract the core to stand up and aggressively raise the knee upward for the jumping part. If done correctly and with enough intent, this should kind of naturally pull your body upwards and make the jump feel much more natural. And when you come back down, you need to engage the standing leg in order to decelerate and control your body to go back into the lunge. This round is split up into 4 15-second segments where we change leg to manage the muscular fatigue for the duration, and there will be a bell telling you when to change. So I hope you've enjoyed this workout, guys. Please comment below how you found it or record a clip of yourself doing it and tag me on Instagram. See you next time.